The state is the one that made it an issue. They put those documents into evidence, the things that Mr. Markell had filed. So we're the defense, and we represent Donna Adelson, and we're just supposed to say, okay, well, they've put it in, let's just let it sit there. We have an obligation to represent our client, and what happened in that divorce, whether it was contentious or not, was an issue the state brought up. They've been calling this a bitter custody battle for years. And they started this case by saying the same thing. So to have the people who were actually involved in the case point out that there never was a bitter custody battle is important, because there never was one. There was never a time when they were fighting over somebody having access to the children. In those pleadings, nobody says, you can't have them, I've got them. You can't have them, I've got them. When they filed their initial pleadings, they did what everybody, according to the lawyer who was on the case for Mrs. Adelson, meaning Wendy, on the case for Wendy, they all filed their typical pleadings. And in the beginning, you ask for certain stuff, and she asked for 5149, maybe for a tax purpose. But there was never one single time, and you can't be convinced that relocation was the issue where they were going to take Danny Markell's kids away from them. If you believe that, you are ignoring the evidence that the state of Florida put on against Donna Adelson. And when I told you in opening that this was all about theory and belief of what a motive was, and there was no evidence that a crime was committed by my client, Donna Adelson, that is exactly what has happened in this courtroom. The state is ignoring the evidence that came in through their witnesses that support our defense, and instead they stand before you with calls and text messages, and they tell you what they mean. That's not evidence. Their argument about what a conversation means is not evidence. You decide what it means. You've got it in front of you, and you have to consider it in the context of all of the evidence that's presented. Not just what the state puts in, but what the defense puts in. And I know at some point when we were putting on evidence, you all were looking probably at me like, what are you doing? Who cares? Some of those little things matter, and I'm going to cover those in the defense, and you'll see why we put those things in that didn't seem like that I had a hoot to do with anything, because they actually did. Now, I think the state, near the beginning of the case, and I don't recall who the witness was, but near the beginning of the case, the state, through a law enforcement officer, elicited testimony about how this event transpired, this brutal killing of Danny Markell, how it transpired, and how they were able to break the case. And what did they tell you? They told you they broke the case because Luis Rivera, who was one of the killers, decided he would cooperate with the state of Florida in exchange for a deal, which for his crime, he ended up, the testimony was, he got 7 more years for committing that crime. This is the man who got in the car, got the gun off the street, drove up to Tallahassee, Florida, stalked, is the best way I can describe it, Danny Markell in a car with his children from his home, watched him take his little boys out of his car and put them into the daycare center, followed him again to where he went to work out at Premier Gym, and sat in wait for him. Sat in wait for him. And then when Mr. Markell came out, trying to work some things out with his ex-wife Wendy about having the kids and who's picking them up at what time, even leaves her a really nice voicemail that they could get together and walk at the school to talk about the education of their older child, where he was going to be going to school because he was going to be starting kindergarten. And Wendy pushed back. You know, she pushed back. This was his time with his little boys, and she's telling him no. You know, I've got plans. Well, it wasn't her time to do that. So leading up to his death, she's arguing with him over about an hour and a half worth of time that she thinks she's entitled to with the kids, but it's his time. And I agree with the state of Florida. The most important thing to that man was those little boys. And he fought for every minute he could get, and rightfully so. Then he drives home in his car while he's on the phone, and Luis Rivera, driving the car that's been stalking him all day, pulls up behind him in his driveway, Sigfredo Garcia gets out and shoots him twice in the head, and they pull off at a pretty high rate of speed and leave Danny Markel dying inside his garage. Left him to die. Those are the people that killed Danny Markel. Those two people. And the state has all kinds of arguments about how Mrs. Adelson's involved because she said these things about him, and we'll get to that in a second. But if Luis Rivera is telling the truth, what did he tell you when he got on the stand? What did he tell you? He said, and this is his signature on this document dated March 11th, 2025, when he was deposed, and those numbers and circles are his. And he testified to you that, where are my numbers? That Catherine Magbanawa, that's right, Catherine Magbanawa is the person that elicited Sigfredo Garcia to kill Danny Markel. Now her versions change over time, so we'll have to address a few of those. And then she says she didn't even know Luis Rivera was involved. This is a woman who the state has admitted lied first time, second time, third time, fourth time, maybe the fifth time. Every time she puts herself under oath and swears to tell the truth, she's going to say more. She told you she didn't even know Luis Rivera was involved, but the phone records that were put in by the state of Florida prove otherwise. Because during the time that they're traveling to Tallahassee, when she can't reach Sigfredo Garcia, whose phone is she calling? She's calling Luis Rivera. This woman can't tell the truth.